Hi! Glad you could make it today. I'm Mickey and you're listening to the Obsession Report. Let's dive deep about things that keep us up at night. First of all, sorry for the long wait. Things have been really busy this week, and this episode especially took a while to script out because of a few changes that I wanted to try out. As mentioned in the previous episode, we are going to be talking about Persona 3 today, in light of the new episode Aigis DLC being released. Instead of simply talking about why I like the game, this is more of a deep dive discussion type of episode. Unlike my other episodes, however, this entire episode will enter spoiler territory. I'll be doing a deep dive into all versions of Persona 3, excluding the original, because P3 Fest is just better than the original and was released within a year. So we can just disregard the original. Also, before we begin, I'm just gonna assume that all of you have played Persona 3. I would like to know your thoughts on the game. What's your favorite aspect of the game? It can be like favorite characters, favorite story, favorite music. That is a thing too. It has pretty good music. Just let me know your thoughts. I'll be very happy to read them. So if you're ready, strap in and let's look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of Persona 3. Starting with an overview of the games. There are P3 Fest, P3 Portable, and P3 Reload. As a TLDR, unfortunately, in my opinion, there is still no definitive version, and I doubt there ever will be, because not having one brings in so much more revenue for Atlus. Each version does something much better than the others, and so playing all of it gives the player an experience that they won't have in the other versions. Let's start with P3 Fest. P3 Fest first came out for the PS2, and with it included The Journey and The Answer. The Journey is the main game where you play as Makoto Yuki, the silent blue hat protagonist, and you juggle school life and being a part of SEAS, an extracurricular group that's focused on fighting shadows in the dark hour. In The Answer, you play as Aigis, the girl robot with a heart, and focuses on the epilogue of what happened after the journey. P3 Reload is essentially similar in format to P3 Fest. The main game is The Journey, while episode Aigis is Reload's version of The Answer. Now, while P3 Reload was touted as a quote-unquote faithful adaptation of Fest in terms of structure, according to Yamaguchi, one of the developers behind Reload, there are some elements that are different. Of course, the gameplay has been revamped to fit a more modern audience, which includes quality of life like scrapping the physical health system, and baton passes are default now in battles. However, there are some other aspects that are different as well with the story, which I will go deeper into later. P3P, or Persona 3 Portable, is the most different in terms of gameplay presentation. Instead of controlling the movement of the protagonist in 3D space, you have a more dialed-down visual novel point-and-click adventure-esque gameplay, where you move a cursor over a still image of a location to control what the player interacts with. For example, hovering the cursor over a character brings up their character portrait as well as a dialogue box where you can interact with them. Despite its dialed-down gameplay and graphics due to it being released on the less powerful PSP, P3P offers something that the other versions do not, the ability to play as a female protagonist. This female protagonist is a completely different character compared to Makoto in Fest and Reload. Firstly, she has a more sunny disposition, although many argue that it is simply a facade. The social links that she has is also very different compared to when playing as Makoto. Oh, I just touched the mic there. Instead of having social links with the female teammates, you now have social links with all the characters, including your male teammates. There are also FemC exclusive social links such as with Ryo and Saori. P3P also does not include The Answer or the episode Aigis equivalent, and so if one wishes to play that, they will not get it in P3P, unfortunately. So now that we have 3 different options to choose from, with each version being missing a large aspect of Persona 3, it's no wonder players want a definitive version with all the aspects included in it, from the main game to the epilogue as well as the female protagonist. There are just so many games to play, so asking someone to play all 3 versions is a pretty tall order unless they are super fans of Persona. Now let's move on to the story and themes of Persona 3. While most players believe that Persona 3 is all about death and overcoming the fear of it, I believe it is actually the opposite. Consider our teammates. If the theme of Persona 3 is truly about death and overcoming the fear of it, then why do our teammates risk their lives every single night during the dark hour and fight shadows? Why is it that to summon a persona, you need to put a gun to your head? It is not because they fear death, but they actually fear life. So let me explain. Let me explain. In the title screen of FES and throughout the game, the phrase Memento Mori is used a lot. Memento Mori translated to English roughly means knowing that you are mortal, that the life you live is not forever and will one day end because of death. A lot of characters also experience a lot of loss, from Akihiko's sister to Yukari and Mitsuru's father, as well as Ken's mother, and even our MC lost both of their parents before the events of the game. As we play through the game, we see these characters encounter loss after loss and see their journey of accepting the reality of the loss and moving forward in life. Tying in the theme of Memento Mori, the main theme of Persona is not just the fear of death. The main theme is how we live our lives to the fullest, knowing that loss is inevitable, be it the others around us or our own lives. Because of this, I believe that the main theme of Persona 3 is actually about the fear of life because of how painful loss is and how to overcome it. If we were to bring in the answer as well, this theme becomes very obvious. Our MC became the seal not because Nyx is going to bring death to the world, but because the world itself is wishing for death. This shows that many people actually see death as a way out of the pain that they experience from living life. At the end, our characters come to terms with our MC's death and start moving forward with their lives. The game also showcases 2 different outcomes from this theme. The first is Cease, where they move forward with their lives with hope for the future, despite of the pain of life and fear of loss. The second is Strega, where they see life as meaningless and they want death to come. But by positioning Strega as the villains and Cease as the protagonists of the story, Persona 3 is showing players that following Cease is the way to go, that there is still hope in life and ways you can live life to the fullest despite knowing your own mortality. In the whole Persona series, P3 has to be one of my favorite themes because of how universal it is and the bittersweet nature of it. P4 and P5 felt more happy and heroic. I guess that's the word I would choose for Persona 5, respectively. And Persona 1 and Persona 2 just felt way too bleak in my opinion. P3 holds a good balance and has a mix of bleak and hopeful elements. Not to say the other installments had bad themes, I don't want to undermine the other games because they were pretty good as well. Okay, let's start with the newest version of P3 that we have. The most obvious aspect that P3 Reload does much better than its counterparts is its graphics. It being released on the PS4 and PS5 compared to the PS2 or PSP just means that technically there is a huge jump in graphics quality. The 3D models are clean, the locations are also more realistic in size, where buildings now actually tower over our main characters instead of just being slightly taller than them in the other 2 games. Reload also includes a lot of modern gameplay UI and quality of life features. The first being the beautiful menus, with Makoto being submerged underwater in different angles. It's obvious that they took inspiration from P5's clean UI and baked it into P3. This makes navigating the different menus from skills, items, social link ranks feel more fun and easy on the eyes compared to the other 2 versions. There is also a huge difference in combat as well. Characters now unlock Baton Pass right from the get-go, and they also have Theurgy, which is kind of like an ultimate move and is unique to each character. Baton Pass is adapted from Persona 5 since that is where it was first introduced, and makes the game less tedious and more smooth to play. The physical health system has also been scrapped, so spending extended periods of time in Tartarus doesn't make you or your team members tired anymore. So you could actually finish grinding Tartarus in a day, while in the other versions you could not. There is also the inclusion of more link episodes and study sessions, where we get to see the C squad interact with each other a lot more in a friendly manner, compared to the other two versions where they just had more of a, I'd say, working relationship. These extra link episodes do help to sell to the player the close bonds between the C's members and really gives weight to the sorrow they feel in episode Aigis a lot more. However, there is an aspect of P3 Reload that hinders me from recommending this game to new players 100% of the time. Maybe 99% actually. That aspect is the sacrifice of theme and atmosphere for ease of gameplay. This is a balance that is quite hard, especially in Persona 3, because its themes and story directly contradicts the ease of gameplay. Let me elaborate on what I mean. We have talked about how the developers have included many quality of life changes that made Reload much easier to play for modern gamers. While these changes do make it such that Reload isn't a chore to play, it really eats into its main story themes. The main theme of Persona 3 is death, and so the atmosphere, gameplay, and graphics had suited this theme in the other two versions. The graphics were desaturated and bleak, the music was much more harder hitting and sorrowful, in my opinion. The tiring chore of climbing Tartarus and fighting shadows also mirrored what the characters were actually feeling. The game had contextualized the dark hour not as something that can be breezed through easily, and it being very tiring for the characters. Because the gameplay and the way it was set up in the other two versions, the player feels exactly what the characters are feeling and starts to relate to them much more. Because of the quality of life features and the bright saturated color palette of Reload, however, that mirroring of experiences between the player and characters no longer exists. Tartarus and the Dark Hour is supposed to feel hard to the characters, but the players themselves do not feel it, which causes a disconnect. So while Reload is a good way to get into P3, the experience while playing it is drastically different, in my opinion. The death scenes portray a more bittersweet feeling compared to a feeling of absolute dread and sadness that the other two versions have. A slight difference in experiences, but can cause a very drastic difference in atmosphere and feeling. Let's now move on to the version that most players would have recommended before Reload came out. P3 Fest. Most recognizable aspect is that you cannot control your team members' actions. You can only assign tactics such as knock down the enemy, which the AI will use skills that the enemies are weak against, heal/support, which the AI will use healing and support skills on teammates or debuff the enemies, and there's a lot others that I'm forgetting. While this aspect of combat is very realistic to real life, it does make for a very interesting mix of tiring, fiddly, and sometimes funny. Not being able to control your teammates' actions directly means that you as the player have no idea what skills they will use, thus making a coordinated attack much harder to execute. The AI also isn't the most polished, so sometimes your teammates will use stupid moves that might cost the fight. These moments can be funny or frustrating at times, depending on the context. I'm sure many in the Persona community and the wider gaming community maybe have heard of the Marin Karin meme. This meme originated from P3 Fest and occurs when you set Mitsuru's tactics to heal/support. Her AI will always somehow spam Marin Karin even if she has other skills to use. It has gotten to a point where sometimes the AI will also select it when she's under tactics. Usually when this happens, it's harmless, since the Marin Karin move is useless against bosses and has a pretty low chance of landing the charm status on normal enemies anyway. The most frustrating of times happens when you're in a boss fight that has gone on for such a long time, or when your teammates get crowd control. One very, very frustrating experience for me is when fighting the Lover's Full Moon boss. Oh my goodness. This boss has the ability to charm your teammates, and characters that are charmed will cast skills that help the boss instead of your allies. I had managed to whittle down the boss's health to pretty much only 1 HP, and was going to go for the finishing strike in the next round of turns. However, the boss somehow managed to charm Yukari, and she ended up casting Diarahan on the boss, healing it to full health. Oh my gosh. It was so frustrating because I was already 15 minutes into the fight and so close to defeating it, and all that progress was lost because of this stupid AI system. Yeah, can you tell how frustrated I am? Anyway, going into the tactics menu to constantly shift tactics sounds interesting on paper, but it turned out to be a chore as well in combat. Unlike the other mechanics such as the physical health system and scaling Tartarus, tactic shifting just feels so much more tiring and artificial compared to those mechanics, because you will have to constantly shift it during shadow fights, which is the main combat scenario that you'll find yourself in. Having to go in the tactics menu the first few times was pretty fun, blah blah. Having to go into the tactics menu the first few times was fun, but going about this roughly 40 hours into the game with many boss fights under your belt makes this experience no longer fun, but tiring and boring. Despite all the negative aspects that I have mentioned about Fest thus far, it has also have some... Despite all the negative aspects that I have mentioned about Fest thus far, it also has some positive aspects to it. Firstly, as mentioned, the game effectively creates a dreary, bleak, and depressing environment while using the desaturated... Firstly, as mentioned, the game effectively creates a dreary, bleak, and depressing environment while using the desaturated color palette and the chore of climbing Tartarus. This fits with the game themes of death, which is a pretty bleak topic. It is also a pioneer in the current gameplay loop that we experience in modern Persona games. The gameplay loop of juggling our limited time on school life, spending time with social links, raising our stats, fusing personas, and the one more system in combat stems from Persona 3. This gameplay loop gets polished over Persona 4 and Persona 5, which is how we have our current smooth gameplay loop that Persona is known for. While Persona 3 Fest does offer a different type of experience to the P3 story, I hesitate to recommend it over P3 Reload now because of accessibility issues. P3 Fest was released for the PS2, and thus getting the original copy is going to cost a lot. Even if you were to emulate it, there are not many options for PS2 emulators simply because somehow Sony made the PS2 so complicated, it has only become viable to emulate recently. While P3 Reload is too easy in my opinion, P3 Fest made the game too artificially difficult. So while I appreciate the game developers trying to inject some realism into the player's experience, it can be really draining at times to play Fest, especially if all you want to do is just unwind after a hard day at work. This problem is exacerbated in the Answer DLC. The lack of a compendium and the constant grinding for minuscule amounts of plot really make the experience very tiring for players. I personally burnt out on the Answer and ended up just watching a long play of it for the plot on YouTube. For players that simply hate the grind, I would actually recommend doing what I did. Don't put yourself through suffering. Now that we have talked about P3 Fest, let's talk about the last version of P3, P3P. So P3P is actually my favorite way to experience the P3 story. This might be a controversial take because I understand not many people enjoy the visual novel presentation of it. However, as someone who does play visual novels, I don't mind the presentation. Besides, you get so much extra content in P3P that I really think it outweighs the cons. Let's start with the elephant in the room, the inclusion of Femc. Femc isn't just Makoto Yuki gender bend, but a separate character altogether. Instead of the gloomy Makoto, we get a more bright, seemingly happier Kotone Shiomi. Her canon name was just confirmed recently. I used to think her name was Minako, but I guess that's not canon anymore. The responses that the player can choose as Kotone is also different from Makoto due to the difference in their personalities. As mentioned, you also have Femc exclusive social links. These include our male teammates like Akihiko, Junpei, Shinji, Ken, and Koromaru. New school social links with Ryo, the sports captain, and Saori, the club leader, as well as social links with Ryoji, the guy that turns into Nyx, and the new exclusive Velvet Room attendant, Theodore. We also have some social links from the male MC side, such as the old couple, Akinari, Maiko, Bibi, Utatsu, Tanaka, and our female teammates, which includes Fuka, Yukari, Aigis, and Mitsuru. Being able to pursue romances with the male social links help to capture an audience that likes men and not women, which in the long run, they make other gamers aware of the Persona franchise. Not only that, certain social links help to shed more light on the main plot, such as with Ryoji. Through his social link, we get to learn more about him as a person, what makes him tick, and how he views the MC. While you can pursue a romance with him before he turns into Nyx, the MC and his relationship is so much deeper than that, since Ryoji learned how to be human and learned more about humans through the MC. Because P3P came out after FES, the quality of social links are way better in my opinion. Firstly, in FES, you are forced to date female social links if you want to reach rank 10. But as FEMC, you can stay friends with the male social links. Not every deep relationship needs to be a romance. Not only that, social links that were kind of like Kenji and the guy that was locked behind him, also got replaced. So that's definitely a plus in my book. Because of the difference between Makoto and Kotone, certain social links, more specifically female social links, now have a different dynamic. These social links now focus more on friendship and understanding the girl's point of view instead of romance and companionship. For example, the social link with Aigis becomes more of companionship instead of it potentially becoming romantic like with the male MC. Because of this, the game could really showcase how the MC and Aigis' relationship goes so much deeper than just friendship or romance. It really emphasizes how the MC is what gives Aigis purpose. There are so many more changes, and giving players the option to play as FEMC really helped to flesh out the characters even more and give new perspectives to the main plot. The FEMC route also includes new music, which, in my opinion, way better than the original P3 soundtrack. I'm not sure if this is controversial, but the music is pretty good. You get earworms like Way of Life, the upbeat school music Time, and so much more. The music now fits FEMC's character more, with more upbeat and bright tracks being heard. Of course, the classic battle music and music from important events still remain the same to give the FEMC route the same flavor as the male route, such as Burn My Dread, The Battle for Everyone's Souls, etc. etc. There's just a lot. You can go and listen to it on Spotify or YouTube. Another aspect that, in my opinion, really made P3P so close to being the definitive version is the ability to directly control your teammates' actions. The balance that I mentioned earlier is very nicely achieved in this version. P3P took inspiration from Persona 4 Golden and included this aspect, which made the game so much less tedious to play. You still have the other systems such as the physical health system and the same layout of Tartarus, which makes the game not so tedious to play, but at the same time still mimicking the character's experience and give the player some aspects of relatability and realism that Reload completely removes. With so many new additions, why do some players not enjoy P3P? Well, for one, the presentation of the game is extremely bare bones. Instead of controlling a 3D model of your character and interacting with the world that way, you have still images of various locations and a cursor that you can use to click on certain areas to interact with. This definitely takes out some player immersion and reduces the 3D gameplay down to just Tartarus and the battle section. For some players, emotional scenes just don't hit as hard since it's simply just images. There's no cutscenes and basically just text describing the cutscene. So I can understand why certain players might not enjoy the presentation of P3P. Another major aspect is the lack of the answer. While the gameplay was very grindy in FES and improved upon in Reload, it did not contain a lot of plot scenes. It is still fundamental to the character's growth and conclusion to their arcs and the game's overarching theme, how to deal with death, how to move forward from death, and the role it plays in each of our lives, how to live life to its fullest knowing that one day we will all die, etc. Without the answer, the Persona 3 experience does feel incomplete, and thus the exclusion of it due to hardware limitations on the P3P is definitely a con. Now that we have talked about the pros and cons of each version, let's talk about notable characters and social links. I won't be talking about every character because then we'll be here for days. I'll be talking about my favorite characters and their social links only. Let's first start out with our teammates, since we spend the most amount of time interacting and battling with them. Let's start with the most controversial one, Yukari. People who play Persona 3 tend to fall into either of two categories. You either love her or you hate her. As for me, I fall into the love her. character camp. Many players who don't like Yukari generally don't like how she acts in the answer. Her flaws and her ugly side is at full display in the answer. She's trying to deal with her grief of losing Makoto and also feels jealous over the fact that Aigis heard Makoto's final words and quote-unquote inherited his power of the wild card. She also acts generally distant and snappish in the answer and also sassy in the journey, which contributes to players disliking her. Personally, I understand why people don't like her, because the way she acts and the feelings are actually quite ugly to watch, and if you don't like characters like that, then there's just nothing you can do about it. However, that is the reason why I like her so much. She's not perfect. She deals with so much grief already because of her father, as well as her estranged relationship with her mother, and now to add on the grief of losing Makoto and the feelings of jealousy that surface really shows that she's just human, like the rest of us. However, seeing her grow and be able to deal with these negative sides of herself was very satisfying to watch, and almost felt as if I was watching a friend of mine grow and learn more about life alongside me. I also like the friendship that we shared with her as FemC. Instead of seeing her as just a romantic partner, you get a friendship that's similar to Yukari and Mitsuru's friendship in Fest and Reload. We become more of a gal trio now, and that change in dynamic has definitely changed the type of grief that Yukari and Mitsuru goes through if the answer did exist for FemC. In Reload, they toned down Yukari's general sassy and ugly side. I don't know, maybe they saw how divided people's opinion on Yukari was, and maybe wanted to make the majority of players like her more. I'm generally okay with the change, but the impact of her change is less obvious now since they toned down her ugly side. Let's move on and talk about a really, really popular character, Shinji. Or Shinjiro, but everyone calls him Shinji. In Fest and Reload, Shinji was a character that joined our party only for a short time because, well, spoilers, he ends up dying from getting shot by Takaya. When playing as FemC, however, you can initiate a social link with him from when he joins the party, and you have until the day before his death to complete it. Through this social link, we get to learn more about Shinji's personal life, get to know him more as a character instead of just his facade as the tough, rough gangster man. Shinji not only loves to cook, but also fears losing the people around him. From losing the people close to him when he was at the orphanage, all the way to him accidentally killing Ken's mom. Shinji expresses how he has become afraid of losing FemC when we get to rank 10 on his social link, proving that we have become one of Shinji's closest friends along with Akihiko. This social link is just great. First of all, I don't know, I have a soft spot for tragic and hurt guys, and he just fits the bill. He's also kind of emo, which many girls like, and you just can't help but feel bad for him, really. Shinji's social link was definitely aimed at the female audience though, and it really worked since many female players online have stated that Shinji is one of their favorite characters. The popularity polls don't lie. One aspect of the social link that I felt detracted from the original, however, is the ability to save him, which is very ironic because I'm happy that we can save him, but at the same time, I'm not that happy. Let me explain. At rank 9, if you are able to find Shinji's watch, during his death scene, instead of dying, the bullet will ricochet off his watch and put him in a coma. While it was a good thing that he didn't die, in the overall theme of Persona 3 of death, this small change does take away the importance and the impact that Shinji's death had on Cease. This is even more apparent for Akihiko. His second awakening occurred because of his resolve to protect the people around him after Shinji's death. That resolve strengthened and he became more focused, which is why the second awakening happened. With Shinji alive, well, Akihiko still get his second awakening, but the impact of that second awakening is lessened. He's not dead. That's why. But it's okay. Shinji being alive is a good thing. I'm happy about that. Overall, Shinji is just a very tragic character that you can't help but just want the best for his future. And also, he's so young. When I first played this game, he was older than me. But now, when I play this game and realize that he's only 18, I just realize he has so much life ahead of him, and it's just even more tragic because in the original, he died so young. At least in the fantasy route, he's still alive somehow. But yeah, I have mixed feelings. Let's just say that. Let's just leave it at that. I have mixed feelings. Okay, let's move on to Aigis, and let's talk about the social link that we have with her. Even though our relationship with her is very much explored in the main story already, her social link allows us to delve deeper into a character and emphasize certain moments that occur in the main story. For example, while the ending of P3 has Aigis promising the MC that she will be there for him in his final moments, it is emphasized again at the end of her social link to really drive home that her purpose in life is to protect and be by the MC's side. Another moment is when Aigis expresses that she feels sad because she's worried that she will never be able to attain the kind of connection because she's not human. However, at the ending, she achieved that connection that she has been longing for with the MC, even though it is only for a short time before the main story kicks in and the MC dies. One aspect of Aigis' social link that I like is that, regardless of the protagonist's gender, her love for the MC never changes. This implies that her love goes far beyond romantic love and is much deeper than that. It can be interpreted as a deep love for connection, companionship, or something around that ballpark. Considering that she's the one that inherited the MC's power in the answer, the social link setup enables for the outcome to make logical sense. Now let's move on to the best social link in Persona, period. In my opinion, it's Akinari. Because if there is one character that embodies the themes of Persona 3, it has to be Akinari. So Akinari is a 19-year-old man that is terminally ill and at the end of his life. When you first meet him, he is depressed and is spending his last days simply existing. However, by spending time with him, we as players get to learn more about his outlook on life, his perspective on death, and how he deals with the reality that his life is nearing its end. His social link is very powerful and deserves to be experienced firsthand. But if I have to describe why I like it so much in just one word, it's powerful. When I first met him, I expected to just find a tragic short side story about death and the impact on the people around him. However, the game really delves into Akinari's reality. With him being so young at 19 years old, did his life truly have any purpose or meaning? He didn't have any notable achievements, didn't have many friends, and generally felt forgotten by the world because of his condition. By bringing up all these questions, it really got me to reflect and rethink on the idea of purpose and what it really means to have purpose in life. In the end, the answer that he came to was deceptively simple. Even if he becomes forgotten because of time, the impact he had on the people around him will still linger simply because he existed. This was shown in the children's book that he wrote as he was dying about the pink alligator. In his story, the alligator was friends with a bird. However, the pink alligator was devastated to find that he had accidentally eaten his bird friend while asleep one day. He was so sad that he cried so much until he died. His tears eventually formed a lake where the other animals can rest and became a haven for these animals. Even though these animals do not know where the lake came from and the tragedy that created it, they feel the impact by enjoying the lake and what has been created. This book has also made a cameo in Persona 4 Golden, when you are helping Nanako do her homework. She brings up this story and how the writer is anonymous and she has to read this and write her own reflections on it for her school assignment. So yeah, he really left this mark on the Persona world. In the end, Akinari ends up dying and we get to talk to his mother one last time before our MC eventually dies as well. The final message that the mother had for us, to express our love for the people around us before it's too late, was also fulfilled as our MC went around talking to everyone that they have met throughout the game and spending one last time with each of them. Easily one of the best social links in Persona, period. So there are some honourable mentions. These social links were very enjoyable and sometimes heart-wrenching as well, but I don't have enough to say about them to have their own section. So the first honourable mention I have is Junpei. It was cool that he became our wingman in the FEMC route. However, there is some whiplash because in the main story, he was jealous that we were the leader instead of him, and then in his social link he became so friendly. He also doesn't become an option to romance because he has his own love line with Chidori, which I like that the game didn't make him a romantic interest because it really shows his dedication to Chidori. The second character is Theodore, the FEMC exclusive Velvet Room attendant. He's more innocent than Elizabeth and brings a different dynamic to the guest attendant dynamic we have in Fest and Reload. Overall, I like this dynamic better because FEMC ends up playfully teasing him and it's just really cute. That's it. And the third character is Elizabeth, the other Velvet Room attendant. Elizabeth is one of a kind and there really isn't anyone like her out there. She kind of does her own thing and no one can stop her. One moment I remember from her is when she emptied a gajillion coins into the fountain because she believes that by giving the fountain more money, her wish is more likely to come true. And by the end, she forgets to wish because she's forgotten that's the reason why people use coins on the fountain. So she just ends up wasting all the coins. Yeah, and I mean, throughout all the spin-off games, Elizabeth is just Elizabeth. She's just hilarious. Easily a super iconic Velvet Room attendant. Since this is the first Persona game that had the social link system, the rest of the social links were mostly the MC being a yes man or just simple side stories to enjoy. There were more social links in Persona 4 and Persona 5 that were enjoyable, but I think that's just because they learned from Persona 3 and they knew where to improve and where to keep the same. So, excited for Persona 6 eventually when it does come out. Persona 3 is really one of a kind. There isn't a game that gives you the same experience out there, and it's why I love the game so much. If you've somehow listened to the whole episode without playing it, firstly, sorry for the spoilers, and secondly, why? I suggest still going to play it, however, because it really deserves to be played firsthand. Also, do let me know your opinions on the format of this episode. It took a longer time to script out because I wanted to be concise instead of just regurgitating everything I had to say. But yeah, thanks for watching or / listening if you're on Spotify. And I'll see you for the next episode. Bye!